Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you live from COG Studios on Wednesday. That's right, Wednesday and not a Thursday. May 22nd is the LA Galaxy get ready for a Friday night showdown with Orlando City in Orlando. 2,218 miles away, the Galaxy are traveling as we start this show right now. They'll land in Orlando, train on Thursday morning, and then play the game on Friday. So a lot to get to. Galaxy riding a 4-game losing streak. We're certainly going to talk about that. But in order to help me get through all of the wonderful news that we have, including international call-ups and all that fun stuff that came out as a result of all the LA Galaxy news, is Miss Sophie Nicolaou. Sophie, thanks for coming by. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. You did a good job. You didn't bastardize my name.
I was trying.
Yes.
It was close, and I was really focused. Sophie, of course, a contributor on Talk Sport, and then also a podcast. What's the podcast?
Highbury Squad.
Highbury Squad. And now, before we even get into any of this, I wanted to ask you. I know, and Larry told me to make sure to ask you this question first.
I love Larry.
Larry says that you're a huge Tottenham Hotspur fan, obviously.
Oh, I just said I love Larry.
And he said that. Can you believe that?
Wait until I see him, little bugger.
Yeah, obviously an Arsenal fan.
Let me tell you, I can't sleep at night. I haven't been sleeping well. I just want this Champions League final to be over with.
I know. I can tell. I can tell. It's stressing everybody out. I can see that. So, but no, you also have done some other podcasts. Did you perhaps podcast or at least do some sort of radio show with a former LA Galaxy player as well? With maybe some Jermaine Jones?
Yes.
Yes?
I did.
Can you give us a little just brief, like, what was that like? Because Jermaine has always seemed like a pretty intense dude whenever I've ever interviewed him or talked to him and stuff like that. What was your interactions with him?
You know, we did a show together for a good few months, and he was really looking to do stuff outside of retiring. One thing I'll say about Jermaine is he is a really legit guy. What you see is what you get, and what you get is what you see. He's very unafraid to give his opinion. He's very honest, and he's a really, really top shelf guy, and I really enjoyed working with him.
That's fun. I always like it. I knew that you had a good experience with him. I know sometimes we only see, at least on my side, some of the crazy, but I've always, you've seen, and I've talked to other players, and they talk about him, and they always say sort of the same thing that you're saying. He's a real guy.
I still think he's a baller.
Yeah?
Yeah.
He can still, he's playing indoor, but, could he still play?
He could play in this team right now.
Yeah, could have helped out maybe against Colorado. Maybe that would have happened. Obviously, the Galaxy coming off of a ridiculous loss to the Colorado Rapids, giving the Colorado Rapids their first win of the 2019 season. So the home winning streak that the Galaxy had was gone the week before whenever they lost to New York City FC, and then they were trying to hopefully give some history to Colorado and losing 12 games or not winning the first 12 games of the season. That didn't happen. So we'll see how that goes and as it goes forward. But what did you you saw the score, you saw what were your first thoughts when you saw the Galaxy lost?
Well, I was unable to get to that game, but I watched it at like 4 a.m. the other morning, knowing that I was going to come on here and speak to you. And I found it to be one of the most frustrating games, I think. And one of the most unfortunate things about football is sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it's the manner in which you lose.
Right.
You can take a loss if you've played really well, but then when you dominate a game the way LA Galaxy did, I have to say I thought the players did really well, better than probably the other three losses previous to Colorado. And the problem was, I think, maybe Guillermo got it wrong on that day.
I think maybe even Guillermo would agree with
yes.
that. There's lots of sort of things. I was fortunate enough to catch up with John Rojas, who was out at training, and John does a great job. And honestly, from the Spanish side of things, there's nobody better. In fact, from the soccer coverage of the LA Galaxy right now, John's sort of your guy. And so I was able to talk to him for about 20 minutes, got a little bit caught up on what he talked with Guillermo about, what he talked with Fabio Alvarez, so we can certainly get to that here a little bit more as we dive in. But, worth noting that the Galaxy are traveling in the air as we speak over to Orlando. They have a game against Orlando. They'll then come home to Los Angeles, and I think we've talked about this on the Monday podcast, but they'll come home to L.A., spend some time in their own beds, and then travel back to Sporting Kansas City. John Rojas talked to Guillermo about sort of the travel schedule and how that went, and Guillermo was saying, if basically there's more than 4 days between the games, it's better to be home and sleep in our own beds and then be able to go back out there and do it. And I think you've seen, as much as Zlatan hated the travel that last year, and he sort of talked a little bit about that, of how we should be traveling, the day of and getting there and that type of thing. It's still pretty obvious.
To Orlando?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't do that on the East Coast trips. You
No.
you have to leave 2 days beforehand. You can't time it, and if there's any sort of hiccups, you would get stuck.
You know what, Josh? One of the things I find with all the English players that I speak to here, and when I do some stuff on TalkSport, is they underestimate the travel. They really do, and we've seen it with Gerrard, we've seen it with Lampard, even Rooney initially. Really, just shocked at what it takes, the toll that it takes. You got the different time zones, you've got the high altitudes, you've got the desert. Sometimes there are so many things to contend with. It's not an easy league to play in, and I think that players do find that shocking when they first get here.
Yeah, and that's always been the case. I think, Kevin has tried to highlight some of that in some of his articles where he's talked about the travel and where he's sort of looked at how much money it would cost Major League Soccer to implement, the chartered travel, which I think would help. But at the same time, there's talks right now about a significant increase in the salary cap that could be coming in the next couple of years, which by some reports might triple or quadruple the salary cap, which would be
nice,
especially if it got rid of like all the TAM and jam and all that stuff.
And the ham.
And the ham and the spam and everything else that you can sort of get rid of. Anything that you can try to find to get rid of and just make it more of. You'd still have designated players, but other than that, you would be just sort of held in by the salary cap, which makes some sense. But, is that money that needs to be spent? The CBA is going to be, the collective bargaining agreement is up this year. So the players and ownership and MLS are all going to get back together. There'll probably be some threatening of a work stoppage, because there usually is.
But then they'll get it resolved.
But then right at the last hour, it'll all be there. Everybody will probably still report to training camps. They'll probably still do all their stuff. There probably won't be anything missed. You may start with maybe the league starts like a day or two late or something, because that would be nice, pushing some stuff. But it should all get done. But one of the things that they were talking about is the travel is going to be big on the
how
players'
do they change
minds.
that though?
That's also, so that can be collectively bargained. So it can be, the players can be like, listen, you need to start flying us around in charters if they think they have the cachet to be able to pull that.
Isn't that the next evolution really for MLS to kind of be up there with? It's never going to be up there with the NFL and the NBA. It's definitely growing. One of the farther than, is it NASCAR, the continually fastest growing sport in the country. Lacrosse is also an insane sport that continues to grow. But MLS is has always been the stepchild, hasn't it? And I think those are the things that you have to fix in order to really, take the league up another level.
Yeah, that is, and there has to be this next level that sort of comes. I think the CBA, the last collective bargaining agreement, it was all about the players finding their free agency, and they got it with a whole bunch of little stipulations and tags. So this CBA, I anticipate, one, that free agency will become a little more open. They'll remove some of those little tags, because that was the whole idea, is they didn't want to have a work stoppage, but they still wanted to get free agency, and they got that. Now, it's bad because you need to be in the league for like 7 or 8 years, and you have to be over a certain age, and it's all these qualifiers in order to actually be a free agent. So this year they're going to pull some of those away. But the other thing they're looking at is salary cap, and they're also looking at travel. So I think those are two really things that will take the league to sort of the next level. And
I think they should send you in there to negotiate on their behalf.
You know who one of the lead negotiators last time, which gave us a lot of insight into what was going on, was Todd Donovan. Whenever he was playing for the LA Galaxy, he was one of the player representatives for the union, and so that was sort of helpful to be able to talk to him and sort of understand what they were going through. This year, I have no idea. There's not been a whole bunch of like player union activity that you would then say, oh well, who are the player reps and what's going on. That'll change as this starts to get towards the end of the year, and we're going to start to find out who those guys are. So you'll know from the Galaxy who those player reps are, because they'll start talking about it, and there'll be some talking points, which is interesting. So let's get to some LA Galaxy news, some other stuff. International call-ups. This is whatever. I got like 17 questions about international call-ups.
Is everyone panicking?
Yes, and I mean, ultimately, I think on Thursday's show or on Monday's show and on last Thursday's show, we talked about the new tournament that seems to be placing MLS against Liga MX, where there's going to be 4 teams from each, and how that could totally derail the Galaxy season if they're going to play people and they don't have the depth to do it and all that. So you had that, but now you look, and there are technically right now 7 internationals who are available to sort of be called up or have been called up recently for their national teams at any level. So there's 7 players.
At different times.
Different times, some of them.
Yes.
Most of them are going at the same time.
Yeah.
And so the biggest news that we sort of got just recently, and it was one that wasn't a surprise, if you remember, Tal Bramos, who is the head coach of the US U20s, left Julian Araujo off the roster. Basically said it was because he was injured. Araujo then started the next game, which I thought was interesting.
I love how that happened.
Yeah, he also said it was for other reasons too, but that was the main reason. So he started. There was an injury to the U20 squad, a forward, and so basically they replaced a forward with a defender this time. Julian Araujo already gone, joining the US U20s. They play in Poland on May 24th, so coming up very soon, 2 days. On Friday.
It's brutal.
Yeah, so he'll be jumping in May 24th versus Ukraine, May 27th versus Nigeria, and May 30th versus Qatar. That is the group stage from the 24th to the 30th. The round of 16 goes from June 2nd to June 4th. The quarterfinals, June 7th to June 8th. And the semifinals, 6-11, so June 11th. And then you get into the finals on June 15th with the third place match on June 14th.
That's almost 3 weeks.
He's gone. So count him out for all of the games that are coming up, these next 3 games before that break. So you have the Orlando game, you have the Sporting Kansas City, and you have New England Revolution. He will not be back for that, so count him out for that. He comes back right as everybody else departs for international duty, and as the Galaxy start to enter their, I think, 20 or 21 day break between games, and that's MLS is trying to abide by the international calendar and doing a poor job of it. What are your thoughts? Just you've seen MLS, I think, sort of try to argue or try to find a way and a balance for these international breaks not being on quote unquote the FIFA calendar, which not really on the FIFA calendar, but however that is. So they run opposite and counter to a lot of the main leagues in the world.
That discussion, there's another debate, right, that keeps going, is the calendar for MLS. And, when you're competing with the major sports here, you have to take all of that into consideration. One of the things that always bothers me as well about the Premier League is the timing of this. Now, these are competitions that there's nothing you can do about, right? Whereas when the Premier League first starts, you've got 2 or 3 weeks of football, 2 weeks of football, and then you break. Now, there will be qualifiers now for that. Previously, there have been friendlies, and it's exceptionally frustrating. Here's the worst case scenario for LA Galaxy. Already thin, squad-wise.
Right.
What if somebody gets injured?
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest concern for Galaxy fans is, especially with the run of results over the last 4 games, you've got they're not just, and they're key players, Josh.
Right.
There are some really important factors here. And I think that's the biggest concern. And then they come back, whether injured or not, exhausted. They've been traveling. They're competing at different levels, different climates. It takes its toll on the players. And, it's not ideal, but unfortunately, if you're a good player and you can represent your country at any level, this is what's going to happen, and this is part of the game.
Well, I think, and people rightfully said this, the LA Galaxy did not have to release Julian Araujo to these because as a youth tournament, you don't have to. But as a 17-year-old kid, you better let him go play in the U20 World Cup. That benefits him down the road.
Absolutely.
It benefits you down the road. It just hurts right now for the Galaxy. The other players right now that have at least been placed on their preliminary rosters, and we've gone over this the last couple of times as we expected this, but all these now are officials, at least on the preliminary roster, and they will get whittled down, so some of these guys may not make it to the full international, which means they won't miss all these games that I'm about to tell you about. But Jonathan Dos Santos for Mexico, Oriol Antuna for Mexico, Sebastian Lletget for the United States, Pipo Gonzalez got called up for Costa Rica, Rolf Felcher for Venezuela, and then the one that's out there right now that nothing will happen right now is Efrain Alvarez, who was with the U17 Mexico team that just won the CONCACAF Championship and will eventually be going to the U17 World Cup I believe in October, and in Brazil is right now.
But Josh, of all those players you just said,
yes,
who's really going to miss out? One?
I mean, it feels like... so Antuna is the one that we're sort of like, okay, is he going to be back is he going to make the full roster?
Right.
He may not make the full roster.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, just in case you want to keep sort of attention and all eyes on that game against Orlando, there is now a picture at least of Oriol and Antuna not being on the plane to Orlando. So whether or not he will be in the starting lineup right now is sort of a question I've asked the LA Galaxy. Until they land and until they can sort of figure that stuff out, they're not going to get back to me, I don't think. But
Sherlock Josh.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It was the hammer. It was the Portuguese hammer himself, Eric, doing his super sleuthing and finding out. But anyway, we'll see if that's the case. But Antuna is the one that could actually be back and not make it. I think everybody expects that Sebastian Lletget. So, I mean, starter Jonathan Dos Santos for Mexico. If he's healthy, he's playing on the Mexican team. Oriol Antuna is a starter for the LA Galaxy. If he goes with the team, that's another starter you're down. Sebastian Lletget is likely going to make the U.S. squad.
I think so.
He's a starter right now for the Galaxy. That's somebody you're going to miss. Pipo Gonzalez is probably going to be a starter, an everyday starter for the LA Galaxy as soon as Guillermo can figure out how to get 3 center backs who are all playing well on the same field at the same time, and he did it last week. You might even expect that he might do it this way. So Pipo Gonzalez with Costa Rica. Rolf Felcher for Venezuela is a toss-up. If he does make the full team, how deep does Venezuela really go in the tournament in Copa America down in South America? So those are all sort of things to watch. But here are your dates right now for your Gold Cup. Your Gold Cup group stages are 6/15, so June 15th to June 26th. Then you get into the quarterfinals, June 29th and June 30th. The semifinals, July 2nd and July 3rd. And the final is on July 7th.
This is the one I have the biggest, I think is the biggest pickle, because Dos Santos, Mexico are... I'm not going to say almost guaranteed to get to the final, but if they don't, it would be a huge upset, would it not? So you're definitely looking at Dos Santos being away for that period of time. I'll be shocked if Mexico don't make it to the final of the Gold Cup. And I think, as we were just discussing off air, Dos Santos, who, people may not like to hear this, but I think he's a very overrated player. And I think that, yes, he's done some good things and he's been good. And I think that he's very talented. I think he picks and chooses his game sometimes, just my humble opinion. But with the team and the way the team is right now, he's become almost like an MVP, even though I may not rate him what he does for the team right now and the value that he brings, as we saw when he was out injured for 2 games?
Yeah, about 2 games. Yeah, 2.5 because he ended up coming out in a half on one.
That was pretty poor. And that could be the biggest pickle of all.
Yeah, and that is sort of, I think right now, at least the way the Galaxy are set up, it's not so much, I think there's an argument to be made that as Zlatan goes, the LA Galaxy go, but there's also an argument to be made that as Jonathan Dos Santos goes, the LA Galaxy defense goes, because without somebody playing in that central position, and granted, the Perry Kitchen now healthy enough to be on the bench last game, so you now have a backup there, but Perry Kitchen is not the same player as Jonathan Dos Santos.
I will admit that.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, even if you don't like Jonathan Dos Santos, you can admit that Perry Kitchen is underneath, underneath Jonathan Dos Santos, and Carrasco is underneath Perry Kitchen, as sort of the depth chart goes.
Bless.
Poor Carrasco. Carrasco gets a lot of crap on the show, and I know he does. And at the same time, you look at he's a 3rd string central defensive midfielder, and he could even be a 4th string if you rate Juninho over him. Guillermo doesn't, but other people do. I don't think I do.
Enough problems right now.
He has a lot of things to worry about. But I mean, you look at that, and Jonathan Dos Santos being gone is going to hurt. If Antuna is gone, quite honestly, the Galaxy lose a ton of speed and some creativity, even if I think the argument is he's totally inconsistent.
Now, with Antuna, I feel like, is it going to be a little bit like, remember when England picked Theo Walcott when he was, Sven-Göran Eriksson picked Theo Walcott when he had just moved to Arsenal and he was 16, 17, and everyone was like, why? Why are they taking him? But exactly for the reasons you just said previously, you take him because he's a future star and they want them to experience a tournament like that at that level. I think that would be it could be so valuable if he doesn't go, because I do think he's an X factor. He brings a real excitement to the team. You can tell technically he's very gifted when he gets the ball. Mm-hmm. You can tell that he has confidence too, and he's just really trying to, I think, really show his talent. And I think as the season goes, I think that he will improve, and I think that we'll see him, probably becoming a really important factor in that team. So yeah, I mean, I think if he can stay, that would be great.
I mean, the hope I think is that some people are thinking that if Jonathan Dos Santos, who has a nagging hip/hamstring injury, it seems like the hip was more the issue after the game on last, what was that, Sunday? Yeah, last Sunday was more of a problem, and he talked about how the hip was hurting him because the hamstring was recovering, and how the opposite things sort of start to hurt a little bit. He's on the flight.
Do you think he came back too soon?
Yes.
I felt like that in his performance a little bit. It felt like, but at the same time, what do you do? Without him, the team is definitely weaker. Even though, yes, I may have a particular feeling about him as a player.
Even though you're a Jonathan Dos Santos hater over here.
I mean, hate's a strong word.
No, I mean,
it felt that way.
It felt like he came back too soon. I'll say that. From all accounts, and certainly from talking with John Rojas, who talked to Jonah, he seems to be fine. He says he's fine. He's ready to play. He's on the flight, so everybody can chill out a little bit about that one. So he should be there, and I expect him to play, quite honestly. I think the Galaxy need him, and he's going to want to play for another reason, too, is that if he sits out, if he shows any chance that he's injured enough to where he can't play, Tata Martino has second sort of guesses about bringing him in for the Gold Cup, even though Jonathan Dos Santos is going to be one of the probably better players on that team because they're missing so many other of their top players in Mexico. I think that, for Jonathan, he has to show that he wants to play, and if that means that he's going to get hurt and do it, then that's apparently what he's going to do.
Boy, that's a tournament that's really diminished.
The Gold Cup?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember when I first moved here in 2001, it was, I don't know, there was an excitement about it. It felt like, wow, okay, it's cool, a version of the Euros in the US. And I think, though, that's because of the strength of the US team at the time and the players that they had. But yeah, I mean, you could just tell from the last one in terms of attendance and even viewership figures and stuff like that. It just feels like it's a tournament now where not top players, I don't think, want to play in it.
Well, I mean, certainly you saw it from Mexico that a bunch of top players don't want to play. We'll see what the U.S. ends up doing in terms of who they get for everything. I think they're going to end up having probably one of their top squads for this. It seems like they want to win it. They want to go out and show something. So a week in Mexico side gives the U.S. a chance. So that should drum up interest in it a little bit more. Again, although I always think that the Gold Cup for me always shows me how much not only from people from other countries that are participating in the Gold Cup are already here in the United States, but them traveling to the United States for these games again. It's an interesting sort of take on it. I wish the Gold Cup would travel a little more in terms of not always be in the United States.
But then Dos Santos, at least he's staying in the same environment, same climate. We need to put him in a bubble.
Some bubble wrap?
Bubble wrap, and then put cotton wool around it too.
That's sort of the thing. So Copa America, by the way, the time frame for Copa America is basically the same as the Gold Cup. They start a day earlier, but they end the same day. So they start June 14th and they end July 7th is the final. There's a third place game on July 6th, just in case you really wanted to keep track of that third place game. So here is the deal for the Galaxy. They play on 6-2 versus New England. That's the last game before the international break. Then they'll play 6-22 at Cincinnati. That is a game that you can expect anybody who's called up to miss for sure. That's too early in all these for that to be for them to be back. So then 6-29 at San Jose, June 29th at San Jose. These are short weeks too if you're paying attention. So June 29th at San Jose, July 4th versus Toronto, which Toronto is very good. We'll see how many players they're missing.
New England and Cincy should be winnable games.
New England and Cincinnati.
Well, the reunion with Bruce, he may ruin the party.
He very well could. We'll see if he ends up taking over, because that was sort of the whole thing. He said, I might come back that day. That might be the first game he actually coaches.
Oh, he's going to be back.
I feel like he was going to. Otherwise, he has like 3 weeks off that he could then come back. So I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't show up, but I'm also counting on him being there. So then 6-29 at San Jose, July 4th versus Toronto, and then July 12th versus San Jose. So the San Jose rivalry gets over from June 29th to July 12th. That's it. No San Jose. And the 7-12 game, that July 12th game, is after all of the finals. So everybody should be back for that game. But how tired are they going to be? Are they going to be injured? What's all that? If the teams went all the way to the finals, I would expect that none of those guys play in that game. And so that means both of the San Jose games, which are rivalry games for the LA Galaxy, both of those are affected by the fact that their internationals won't be there.
And if there's any game that you don't want to have a weakened team, it's against San Jose.
Yeah, and by the way, LAFC comes not too far after this. So the fact that everybody will be coming back from international and then playing against LAFC. The schedule's not kind to the Galaxy. I don't know that it's going to be kind to everybody, but whenever you have the possibility of 5 internationals and 4, I don't know, 5 starters, they all feel Felcher's a starter, Pipo's a starter, Leget's a starter, Antuna's a starter, and
a derby game though is very different. And as you've seen, we own and have owned LAFC, or Galaxy have owned LAFC in league play since they've come into the league. So I feel like that game, it's a little bit different than. I'm more worried about San Jose.
It is, and you're right. You're right to say that because there's plenty of time for that. I'm just saying, as we've seen with the Galaxy right now on a 4-game losing streak, this team might be a streaky team. We don't know yet because it's still early in Guillermo. But you saw them run through April, and you're like, okay, they weren't playing great all those games, but they were winning. And now they didn't play good for 3 games. They played okay for 1 game. They've lost 4 games in a row.
I was ready to anoint Guillermo. I was ready to give him, hand the baton of the next great strategist in MLS and tactician. And I don't know what has changed from April to May.
The calendar. Right now, that's about all I can say. It's a couple things. I'll throw these out. You tell me if you think I'm crazy. Okay.
You're crazy anyway.
Yeah, I know. We knew that. One is the schedule. The schedule was tough on them. You certainly saw them playing tired. MLS teams aren't deep enough to be able to, and this Galaxy team is not deep enough to be able to handle that schedule. So you saw that dip in form. That was probably the first 3 games. The first 2 games for sure. The last 2 games, you're also missing 2 designated players with Roman Alessandrini out and Zlatan Ibrahimovic being suspended.
But Alessandrini, he is important and he has been out. But yes, go on.
5-0-0 whenever Alessandrini plays this year.
Okay, I'll take that.
Whenever he didn't play, I think they had 1 win out of the other games that they were playing.
We don't know what this team really would be like with him. He's not, he's been so injury prone. It's been such a shame because there are moments where, you see the difference. You see a player like him and his quality and what he could bring and what, he could have done with Zlatan as well. So it's a real shame. It really is, but it just hasn't worked out, has it? It's
not yet. No.
Oh,
no.
You live in hope.
No. Yeah. I mean, with Alessandrini, all the highs, you get the highest of highs with him and the lowest of lows. It's the 2 dichotomies there.
I feel bad for the guy.
And I think if you looked at his injury history before he even came to the Galaxy, there were hints that he could be an injured guy. You never know how that's going to play out, but the Galaxy don't tend to be very lucky with those things.
So is Gareth Bale. Maybe we should go get him.
There you go. There's a good idea.
How about someone who can cross the ball?
We will get to. I don't think the Galaxy need any more crossing the ball people.
Well,
I don't know.
They put in 35 crosses. I don't think it was a case. Well, I think there was some bad quality crosses.
MLS, by the way, I would like to point out, MLS is full of horrible crossing. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. I was watching a little bit of the Red Bulls Vancouver game, and they're sending in crosses both sides. I'm just like, these are all horrible.
They can't get past. If they can't get past the first defender, it's out for a throw. It's out for a throw-in.
There's 2 things that drives me crazy when you can't get past the first defender. But on a corner kick, if you can't get it past the first guy, you should have to do push-ups on the spot.
Oh, I would fine players. I said this on the podcast the other day. I will fine players if they can't get past the first defender on a corner.
Oh, my favorite.
It's like the swear jar.
Yeah, you should have to do it. Absolutely. Well, you were mentioning some names, some rumors. Those weren't any. The Gareth Bale one, I'm going to have to say not high on my list of things that possibly might happen.
Imagine that though.
Yeah.
We'd have to get rid of half of the team, though, wouldn't we?
You just need to get rid of 1 player, right? So, yeah, I mean, Zlatan doesn't come back. You can get Gareth Bale if you want.
No, it has to be the 2 of them together.
Oh, you want both? Okay, yes. Then you have to get rid of Roman Alessandrini.
Fine.
Okay,
let's make
deal.
that happen.
That seems like a good upgrade.
I should be the GM.
Easy. You talk to Dennis next time you see him. Okay, so we get to there's rumors abound right now. There are no good rumors abound. People obviously looking at the summer transfer window now. So we're already shifting forward into July whenever that transfer window opens up for the LA Galaxy and for Major League Soccer. So listen, just the quality of those rumors gets better as you get closer to the window. Now,
the tease is unbelievable.
It is kind of fun. Midfielder Daniel De Rossi from Roma, 35-year-old central defensive midfielder. He apparently is out of contract and will not come back
He's a Roman god.
But he's wanted by everybody. That's at least the thing that I saw. He's wanted by everybody. Boca Juniors, which is how I think the LA Galaxy's name gets mentioned in this, by the way. Boca Juniors is interested. Napoli apparently is interested in bringing him in, but apparently the team that is definitely not interested in him is Roma.
Yes.
So whether or not you think the Galaxy could use another central defensive midfielder that would also have to be a designated player, because you're going to have to pay him some money. He's not going to come
But
cheap.
you could get him from a little bit cheap. Could you get him for, and I say cheaper, but...
Like 1.5? Could you get him under the TAM? Maybe. I've stopped trying to guess those because, I mean, Zlatan came for 1.5, and I would have said, you cannot get Zlatan Ibrahimovic for $1.5 million. Yeah, there's a possibility of that stuff.
Listen, here's the thing with LA. It's very likened to Manchester City, Manchester United. They're the LAFC are the noisy neighbours, and they're making a lot of noise.
Right.
It's the same with my club and Tottenham, North London, noisy neighbours 2.0, and LAFC and LA Galaxy are kind of like the noisy neighbours 3.0. The difference is that Tottenham and LAFC haven't won anything of note yet. Right? But the threat is there. And I think what they need here is you've got Zlatan. He's a star. He's a superstar. He's in the Ronaldo Messi bracket, right? The guy has been incredible. He's had an amazing career. He's done some insane things. Said some insane things too. Yes. But De Rossi, he's a star in a different way. You know, like when Keane first came, everyone was like, Keane, good player, great player, did well in Europe, failed at Liverpool, was a superstar for Tottenham, a superstar for his country. And I don't think people expected Keane to be the rock star that he was when he first arrived. I really don't.
I knew who Robbie Keane was, but as I always sort of, gauge on how much does everybody else know who Robbie Keane. My mom had never heard of Robbie Keane, right? So she was like, who is this? And I'm like, trust me. I got from everything I've seen and heard, this guy seemed. I'm sure I've watched him play, but it wasn't somebody who was like, oh, this guy's going to come in and blow up MLS.
Right. And not only did he just adapted right away. He was just brilliant. He embraced everything about the league, about the team. I think De Rossi could be similar in that, is he a little bit older? Because I can't remember
35.
how old. Yeah, Robbie was how old when he came here? Do you remember?
I want to say he was 32 or 33.
32, yeah.
He may have been younger than that, though. He was with the Galaxy for a long time. I might be able to look that up.
And, both with a lot of mileage. De Rossi's played at the highest level in Serie A.
Yep.
He also played for the Italian team. Robbie, the most decorated player for the Republic of Ireland. So even though he's not a household name, I feel like someone De Rossi is also the type of quality player that would keep Zlatan happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. I think the Zlatan issue is, at least, this is hard to predict, but it seems like that he's not coming back next year. I mean, it just seems like he got the 2 years, and he's only doing 1-year contracts, and so we don't really know where his head is at. But the way, personally, I've seen MLS treat him recently, and just the way the Galaxy have been playing, and I just don't feel like he's going to be there for a very long time.
He was very bummed the last time we were in the dressing room, right before the ban came. It wasn't again, I think frustrated with some of the quality around him. I also feel like he needs to be very careful about showing that emotion in a negative way on the pitch. I love him dearly and I think he's a rock star, but I also think that sometimes when he gets a little bit flustered, I don't think that helps players around him. And, younger players, you've got to say they're going to be a little bit intimidated by him. I mean, Phil Foden at Manchester City still says, I see Kevin De Bruyne in training and I want to ask him for his autograph.
Right.
He needs to be a bit careful of that too. But also LA Galaxy need to be very careful and make sure they surround him with really good players. And the coach needs to get his tactics right every now and again.
That's something. Let's get up. So just a training update. And again, I talked to John Rojas, so let's go over some of these things that we can sort of talk about in terms of Guillermo and what he said, and then also about Favio Alvarez, because Favio obviously made his MLS and LA Galaxy debut. I'll tell you right now, Favio was very pleased with how he played. That's what he told John. He said that he said, for the first game, being on the field with guys I don't know that well, after doing all the traveling, after not being really settled, although he does have an apartment now and he is settled. His girlfriend is supposed to arrive next week. So those are all good things when you're looking at Favio Alvarez and how that's about to go down. But Favio said, I thought I played pretty well. You looked at his passing percentages and they were high enough for the first game. That was good. He had 2 shots on goal. He created 3 chances, and he said that, Guillermo liked his positioning, that where he was playing with his back to goal, getting the ball and either distributing it back out to the sides whenever he gets it, or turning and facing that central defense and making them make a choice and finding passes and creating chances. That's where Guillermo wants him, which is interesting because Guillermo also said that he likes Sebastian Lletget in the center more than he liked him on the wing. But if you're going to play Fabio Alvarez in the center, then Sebastian Lletget has to go on the wing. So I imagine that that's what you're going to see with this stuff. So if, in fact, Antuna is not playing, then you have to look at this and say, okay, probably Sebastian Lletget flies out and takes that, and then Pontius or Boateng takes the other wing.
Yes.
And I think you're pretty balanced. I'd like to see Lletget and Antuna because I think that's the top choice.
Yeah.
But there's still some balance there. It's not a complete loss. With Fabio Alvarez, they've gotten a little bit of depth, and they've got a little bit of choice now of where they can move players.
And I think a little bit more quality. And, you got to give the guy a chance. He's got to settle in. First game, did quite well. And these other ancillary things that you mentioned, an apartment, his girlfriend moving here, at the end of the day, players are also people. And I think sometimes we forget that, it's not just about a transfer coming, putting the shirt on and taking a picture. This is their life. He's moved to a totally different country.
Doesn't speak the language. Technically speaking, everybody on the Galaxy speaks Spanish for the most part now. But, I mean, he doesn't speak English, although he says he's going to start taking lessons. So, again, he's trying to involve himself and be comfortable here in the United States. Those are all good signs. But you're right. They're people.
Yeah. And you've got to give him the opportunity to settle in. I'm quite excited about this signing. I think hopefully, and then getting to see him play with Zlatan again. I think that, a good quality, good technical player and somebody who I think could really contribute as time goes on and he settles in LA. Yeah,
and hopefully the Galaxy can figure out how to use him, and then they can learn how to play through the middle a little bit more, because the wings to the outside and the crosses in, again, 33 crosses in the game on...
Yeah, but who was in the box?
Ima Boateng, the ever tall, ever present Ima Boateng.
Yes. I mean, bless.
He's listed at 5'6", by the way, and everybody knows he's not really 5'6".
Then I'm 5'6" too.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about be set up to fail. This is why I'm a little angry at the coach, who I've really lauded since he's got here. I just think that was. Everybody could see that just wasn't going to work, and he didn't change it until much, much later, and he should have made a move much earlier in the game. And I just felt bad for Boateng.
Pontius coming in was the correct move because
before he made the mistake.
Yeah. I mean, listen, one of the things that we also talked about at training that John talked to Guillermo about is, what did you learn from all this? And there's a couple different things. So one is that he said this after in our press conference too. He said, I need to learn to use this roster. And he goes, and we're testing people out in positions because right now we don't really know the depth, because the idea is that even when somebody's injured, that the quality doesn't drop off. And he goes, and again, I think that's a great idea to have. And in leagues, in Argentina, where you're able to spend more money, or at least money in positions where you have subs that are just as good as the guys who are starters. I mean, this is an English Premier League thing. If you pull somebody off the bench, for the most part, there's not a huge drop-off. They're probably going to improve your chances, depending. Most of the time they're supposed to improve. In Major League Soccer, that's not the case. You bring a guy off the bench, and your chances usually don't get better. They get better because the guy has fresh legs, not because he's a more technical player or that this is what he does. So Guillermo's trying to learn how to use that roster. So that was one thing. The other thing I thought was really interesting that John sort of relayed to me. He talked about the conditioning and the training. And Guillermo says, I need to be more cautious with how I train these guys because the schedule and the travel is a lot. And that can cause us issues. So I need to err on the side of caution and not necessarily push in training to get, let's have the most demanding training.
So I was going to ask you this because I was thinking, is this slump a little bit of a result of intense training? He really pushes them. He's a no-nonsense coach, isn't he?
Yeah, he seems to be.
And some coaches are a little bit more lenient with training. Other coaches are much more intense. And I feel like maybe there was a little fatigue that came into play. And I don't like to make excuses. You mentioned that earlier, but I can't help but think when you now are saying this, that maybe he realized that he has made a couple of really grand errors over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And again, we've got to give this guy a chance. He's adapting to the league too. He's adapting to a team that he's just really getting to know, right, Josh?
Yep.
And I think that we've seen him be able to pull out results when they haven't played well. But we've also seen the team lose when they have played well. So I think that's the balance that he needs to get right. And I just don't think he should tinker too much.
It's hard though, right? Because we say don't tinker too much, but I think all going back, and I was even guilty of this, if you go back and you look at that midweek game against Columbus, where they had a chance to take over first place in the Western Conference, first place in the league, and you're sort of like, yeah, you got to go for that, right? You got to throw everybody in. I mean, I think this is a case where Bruce Arena would have started the kids, and everybody would have thrown their hands up and said, but Bruce, you have a chance at first. And the whole thing, it's like, Bruce is like, yeah, but I can give everybody else the week off, that midweek off, and then I can bring in a couple guys, but then I'm still set up for this weekend, and then I'm still set up for the next weekend after that. Everything is still just their normal sort of thing. Guillermo went after it against Columbus.
He threw the kitchen sink at it, and it didn't pay off. And again, it's very glaring, and it feels worse for Galaxy fans when your neighbor is relentless and isn't dropping points. It hurts that much more, right? So I think that he'll find that balance. But like you said, with all of these absentees coming up in these international tournaments, that's going to be really tough for him to manage.
Yeah.
We're going to really find out in the next how many weeks the kind of coach that he really is and how he's going to adapt with all of these challenges that he's faced with.
Yeah, I think getting through the Gold Cup break and sort of the quote unquote second half of the season that's going to pop up after, everybody's going to call it the second half after that. Sort of how that goes and whether or not this team is as good as we think it is. I don't think it's top team in the Western Conference. I think that they had a chance to be that, and if they won some games, they maybe could have been there.
So I was looking at this earlier. Yes. How far off are they?
They are falling further and further behind. So LAFC currently at 31 points, the LA Galaxy at 22 points. LAFC has one more game played than the LA Galaxy. LAFC also is outpacing basically the entire league right now too.
Well,
so
they're the Atlanta United so far of this year, aren't they?
Yeah. And if you think about sort of the roster building that the Galaxy are doing versus the roster building that LAFC technically has about a year a head start of the Galaxy in terms of where that is, which may be a good sign for the Galaxy for next year in terms of how Guillermo and Dennis Nicoloou, we know, and Kevin has sort of pointed it out many times, we pointed it out many times, Guillermo was sort of hinting at it when he was talking to John yesterday at training, basically saying, I mean, there's some guys that we're still trying to figure out on this roster. And I think if you read between the lines, that he's trying to say, this isn't my team. It's not all my team. I brought some guys in, but some of these guys are going to be gone next year.
Listen, they just need to stay the course. Are they likely to win the division?
No.
No, absolutely not. But once they get into the playoffs, this is a team that has, maybe not these players, but this franchise has been there before, gets it, understands it. The fan base does too. And I think once you get into like that type of scenario, I think LA Galaxy are the kind of team that can rise to that challenge.
Yeah, it again, we just you haven't seen this team. I don't think we've seen this team play up to their level yet. The closest was the game against Minnesota. I actually said the game against Philadelphia is going to turn out to be their best game, and Philadelphia continues to rise and now sits at the top of the Western Conference. But the game against Minnesota that they played at home without Zlatan and I think without Alessandrini in that game, where they ended up winning 3-2, but they played 71 really good minutes of soccer, is sort of their best performance right now, and you haven't been able to see that since.
And Philly thrashed Orlando, didn't they? 4-1 or something?
Yeah, I think they did.
So, and that's a team that we play next. So
that's sort of the whole thing. And they're coming off of a 5-1 victory over Cincinnati, which Cincinnati is sort of the doormat of the league right now, which is expansion team, kind of expected, unless you're spending lots of money like the Atlantas that come in and do that sort of the right way. Yeah, then you're Cincinnati or you're Minnesota, and on the other side and the flip side of that. Let's see. I want to get to. We sort of touched on some rumors. I'll touch on one other rumor somebody asked me about. Again, all of these are 1-star rumors. Remember, we rank them from 1 to 5. If you look and actually go to the Corner of the Galaxy website, we have our rumor tracker up there. It has DeRossi on that rumor tracker at 1 star right now.
1 star for DeRossi.
It's not about what I feel whether or not the player would be good. It's about whether or not I think it could happen. If you told me that Cristiano Ronaldo was coming to the LA Galaxy right now, I would probably give it 1 or 2 stars because I'm like, how is that going to happen?
He's going to Miami, isn't he?
Is he? There's been a long rumor that he's coming to the LA Galaxy. The rumors lasted for about 7 years.
Well,
like that a long time ago.
Then David Beckham came along with his franchise.
Well, I think it was after Beckham, and he was sort of like, oh, if I go to there, we'll see, there's still a wink, wink, nod, nod handshake that I'm sure happened, and the LA Galaxy are going to land Cristiano Ronaldo.
He does love coming here for vacation.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
This
We're
is
lucky to
true.
live here.
We are very lucky, very fortunate.
Although it was cold and windy
It
at
was
the
like
game,
London today, let's be honest.
Craziness.
And you've been to London, so you know how that feels.
It was cold and windy when I was there. And I was in Scotland. It was cold and windy whenever I was in
colder
Scotland.
and windier there.
It tends to be. Further north you get. The training schedule, I think we've already gone over in terms of the travel to Orlando. They train in Orlando on Thursday. Friday, the game is at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So tell your boss you're going to have to leave early if you want to go watch that. Some watch parties are up. I guess not as many as probably you'd expect on a weekend. But if you head over to Angel City Brigade, they've posted that. If you go to LA Riot Squad on Twitter, they've posted those as well. So LA Galaxy versus Orlando City at 4 p.m. The game is on Unimas and I believe Univision. So check that out and sort of keep an eye on that, which I also believe means it's probably going to be on Twitter as well. So if you want to watch it on Twitter, you can watch it on Twitter.
Is it on Facebook?
I don't know if it's on Facebook. I know it's on Twitter. I can't remember. I don't know. Again, I'm very hopeful that the league eventually goes and sells all of the rights to all of the games to one spot, and then we get to watch any game, and blackouts won't matter, none of that stuff will matter. We'll see if that happens. I don't think so.
The great thing about new technology is that there's a way, where there's a will, there's a way to watch.
Yeah.
Someone's bound to share a link with you.
We'll see. Yeah, I was going to say, most of the time, I don't retweet those, and I don't condone any of that.
No.
But obviously,
and I didn't say anything.
No, we didn't. Do not, and I repeat, do not use VPNs to get around blackouts. Don't do that. That sounds like a horrible... It's illegal. It's not legal. It's illegal. So definitely do not do that.
Yes.
All right.
No.
We've touched on the standings a little bit here. The Western Conference currently led by LAFC at 31 points with 14 games played, 2.21 points per game. They lead Major League Soccer in points per game and in points. Seattle Sounders in the Western Conference, 26 points, 2 points per game, having played 13 games. Houston Dynamo still slacking from behind after the CCL. 11 games played so far, 2.09 points per game, so slightly above Seattle, but sitting in third with 23 points. The LA Galaxy, despite the fact, Sophie, that they have lost 4 games in a row, sit in 4th place in the Western Conference. So I think if you're...
I know, it's what I was saying. It's not...
It hasn't hurt them
they just
all that much.
can't lose. They've got to stop the slide on Friday.
And we're going to get to the game on Friday, but I don't know if it's just, you're asking a lot when you travel over 2,000 miles on a Friday. Anyway, well, down the line we go.
It would be so Galaxy, though, to
win that game. Yeah, I know. Minnesota currently sits in 5th, 18 points, 12 games played. FC Dallas, 18 points, 13 games played. Real Salt Lake, 16 points, 12 games played. The worst team in the league, well, you remember them. They came last week. Colorado Rapids at 0.42 points per game and having a total of 5 points, 3 of which they just got from the LA Galaxy.
Unbelievable.
Goal differential of minus 13, by the way, for Colorado, which is not the worst in the league.
I think that crushed the coach losing that game.
I'm sure it did. I'm going to ask you a trivia question. You probably I wouldn't have known the answer to this. Do you know who has the worst goal differential in Major League Soccer
this season?
It's an Eastern Conference team. I'll tell you that. So think of bottom of the Eastern Conference, but not an expansion team.
Vancouver? Oh, no, Vancouver is in
Western
the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So this is a trick question.
I don't.
Is it like Atlanta United?
It's not. I know it would be one of those. They just got a new head coach and GM.
Tell me.
Bruce Arena's New England Revolution. Yes.
I should have known that.
Yes.
Damn it.
Minus 17. So minus 17 is their goal differential. Minus 12 for FC Cincinnati. So those look like some of the worst ones. Minus 13 for the Colorado Rapids. The LA Galaxy currently sitting at +1.
How many years before Bruce wins an MLS Cup
with New England?
3 years?
No, it's going to be, it's going to be longer than that because he has to convince Robert Kraft to spend money in New England. And I don't know if that's going to be possible. I'm sure they promised him the world, but Robert Kraft and doing New England has been good in the past, but they've never really spent the big bucks.
5 years.
Bruce Arena is going to have to get him to spend the big bucks.
Look, you're talking about the Sir Alex Ferguson of MLS. If anyone can do it, he can.
Yeah, this is true. By the way, the LA Galaxy outsider, as he's known, Madam Serrano, it says the U.S. Open Cup draw is on 5:30. So again, we're talking about games, we're talking about schedule congestion. So May 30th, you'll get the U.S. Open Cup draw. LA Galaxy will be involved in the U.S. Open Cup. The LA Galaxy will be involved in this tournament that's coming up between Liga MX and MLS, and that will happen between July, August, and September, where they have 14 games.
Now.
This is all my build up to all this stuff. So the not out of the woods, not even close to out of the woods, a congested schedule to finish out before the Gold Cup starts and that Gold Cup break starts. So the Galaxy have a ton of work to do in the next 3 games if they're going to sort of right this. Now, I mean, best case scenario, they win the next 3 games. They win the next 3 games, all of a sudden you're like, okay, everything's fine here. You're good. But they haven't gotten any points, 0 points in the month of May, and it's their busiest month with 6 games.
I think it would be a huge statement for this team to win this game on the road without Zlatan. And I think that for the confidence of the other players to do it without him, at the point where they really are low on confidence,
right.
They are so crushed because they know that they should have won that game against Colorado. So many chances, hitting the post, 35 crosses, not being able to convert, not being able to really have to close that game off early and sit back and be more comfortable. And then to make a mistake like that on the break, it was heartbreaking. So for them to be able to go to Orlando and get the points, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but it would be huge. This would be really huge without him. I think it's really important that they can't lose. Even if they get a draw, it'll be a good building block.
And I think, best case scenario is a win. A reasonable option is perhaps a draw. We can get into predicting it. What I'm going to do is I'll open the phone lines if anybody wants to call in with any questions for myself or Sophie. 949-734-4217 is the phone line. 949-734-4217. Only going to keep it open here for about 5 minutes because we're going to have to move on and still cover some more stuff. Sophie, if you're... people want to know where they can find you on Twitter. First of all, I'm getting the chat room saying where. So tell people where they can find you.
I'm at Soccer Diva on Twitter.
Easy enough.
And that's it. That's real simple. And then the other podcast is at Highbury Squad.
There you go.
Yeah.
So both those places are. Yeah. No. And we'll get it at the end too. The chat room's like, all right, Sophie knows what she's talking about. I can see the British accent probably swayed him at the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's really what we needed.
Half the time.
Half the time. That's right. That's right. You already come into this with a leg up with the British accent. So doing that. Okay. So we'll open up the phone lines. We'll see if anybody calls. We'll get to some questions that we have for this show, so that way we can sort of guide those phone calls in, because there's always a delay, and maybe nobody wants to talk. We'll
Maybe.
See. It's
a lot
happened.
of people like to write these days, Josh.
They do.
It's all about texting.
They do.
And
Yeah, which we got. So I went to Reddit and I got some questions from Reddit. There's a question from Twitter here as well. So first from Hector, he says, question for tonight's show: will the LA Galaxy make a move in the summer transfer window? But he actually puts a name on this for Antonio Valencia, Manchester United, 33-year-old right back. I think we were talking a little bit about on this before we started recording. Is there a possibility that he could be had for under $1.5 million, or is there a possibility that you would move somebody at summer?
And your answer was?
No, it's not happening.
But a good name. Look, listen.
It's a good name.
I think he still has something to offer. He fell out of favor at Manchester United.
Yeah, I think he's had 6 appearances this year, or maybe 8. I can't remember, but 6 or 8.
And to not be able to get into that Manchester United team says a lot, maybe about where his play is right now. But I really respect Antonio Valencia. We've seen him come over and play here as well with his country. A really top shelf guy. People at Manchester United really, really like him. And
Ecuadorian, so he fits into the whole Spanish flair that the Galaxy currently have. I mean, it's not the most out there rumor. It's more plausible in my mind than De Rossi.
Absolutely. And an ex-teammate of Zlatan. And so, again, I'm not trying to pamper Zlatan here in any way, but the truth is you have to take care of your superstars. And to land someone like him, I actually think he could contribute and do a really good job still.
Yeah, it would be interesting. The Galaxy have, obviously Araujo is the young right back, and then you have Ralph Felcher, who is the current right back. But Felcher probably, I think they only got him for a year. They canceled the contract and then they signed him for one more year.
I would start Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the choice.
Yeah,
but yeah, again, salary cap things, all those things. Let's go to Hugh from Reddit. Everybody loves that because that's his full name, Hugh from Reddit. Personally, I don't think Guillermo Barros-Schelotto was given the best hand at the start of the season, coming into a team that was completely built by 3 previous coaches in a short time span. He had to deal with very little cap and salary room up until Kamara decided to leave and Gio was bought out last minute. Guillermo is still trying to patch together a cohesive team utilizing 3 designated players he didn't sign, one of which has been MIA. I think that's Roman Alessandrini most of the season, and large bloated contracts that don't work like Jorgen and Perry Kitchen. With all that said, his question's very simple. When does Guillermo Barros-Schelotto get to actually sit on the hot seat? When is his job in question? 4 losses in a row. Is his job in question?
If you get rid of him, who are you going to bring in?
Yeah.
The guy that you would have brought in has just taken a job at New England. The guy that maybe you would have convinced to come back, right? And also, you've got to have a strong manager who can manage someone like Zlatan as well. I think that he gets a pass this season. A little bit like my team, Arsenal. I feel like Unai Emery gets a pass. You know, everyone's asking for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's head. He's inherited a mess at Manchester United. Unai inherited a mess at Arsenal. And, you know, he's inherited a bit of a mess, really, hasn't he, Josh? If we're going to be fair, I think there's some good parts, but there's also parts that are really tricky and are going to take a couple of transfer windows to navigate around. And there's going to be some reshuffling that's going to have to happen and some sacrifices will have to be made. Right. But if he's your guy, you got to back him.
That's the thing. You have to start giving somebody a chance to build. And you didn't give anybody really a chance to build. And there's reasons for all of that. And I don't think any of the...
rightly so, I think. With
up to a certain point, yes. I mean, I still thought that they were going to give Siggy Schmidt more time because he came in and sort of took over at the end of one year and then was trying to come through another year and didn't. But again, with the health issues that eventually started happening, you could see that maybe was the correct move overall. But you look at Guillermo, you have to do it. And Luis in our chat room actually says that he can't call in. He says, but, you know, will Dennis Teclosa give Guillermo Barros-Colona more than a year to try? I think he will.
I think in order for LA to rebuild and have stability, and I think that's what the club really needs right now, is stability and identity. For so long we've known what the culture of this team is. We've known because they've been a championship winning team. It's very, very difficult for fans to accept where the club definitely was at last season, right? I mean, this season it's not so bad yet. Still in the playoff places. Yes, a really bad run of form right now, but it's a long season. There's still a long way to go. And I think that eventually you have to really allow a manager to put his identity on this team. The players are a reflection of the manager, and I do believe that this manager is a solid choice. He's young. He himself looks lean. You know, he takes care of himself. He's got a lot of energy.
He looks like he could still play, right? I mean, up to a certain point, you're like, he could still play.
Yeah.
He could do it for at least for a substitute appearance. Give him 10 minutes. He could do something.
He can come on with Jermaine Jones.
Exactly. I'm sure that's it. Let's see. I'm trying to see. Okay, this one's my favorite question that I got because I like that people pay attention to what I say and then repeat back stupid stuff that I say. So that way I can then answer for it. So this is Nerdy Rocker 24 on Reddit. He says, I recall you saying that there is no defender in this league that can mark Zlatan Ibrahimovic. If you had Jelle Van Damme versus Zlatan, who would win?
Ah, Josh, you take it away, why don't you? You shouldn't. You should be very careful about what you say
right?
on live.
I was going to say,
broadcasts.
people are going to listen to this and then think I know what I'm talking about.
I mean, there are times where he is undefendable.
He is, and it's his technical side. Yeah.
Undefensible?
Indefensible. I don't know. It's one of those. That's
Someone will correct
you
us.
Speak English. I don't know.
Not since I've been living here.
There you go. That's it. So I would say this: that Jelle Van Damme, while a physical specimen and can be a technically gifted defender, does not have the technical ability to be able to stay with Zlatan. And I don't think the physicality there is totally matched up. I still think Zlatan finds a way to. It's not like Zlatan hasn't played against a guy like that before.
I mean, he's faced some fierce defenders in his time.
So
rattle off the teams he's played for.
Yeah,
I think Zlatan can take care of himself. And you know what? It's really good that people are challenging themselves against him.
Yes.
And they're really trying to rile him up because they know he's a hothead.
Yep.
And as we've seen,
poke
the bear, and they poked it.
And that's what happens.
Paid the price.
Indefensible, by the way. We're getting
indefensible.
Indefendable. That's not. There's not even an S. Sergio says indefendable.
Indefensible is like if someone's up to something bad.
Right. You can't defend them.
Indefendable. It's got to be undefendable. It can't be indefendable.
It's got to be like undash defend. Who cares?
Well,
this is a question for Wendy. Wendy was one of our co-hosts who her vocabulary was always way above mine. I had to look up words every show. All right. We talked about. I wanted to get to Matt on Reddit, and he said, what are the implications of the international call-ups? All that thing. So we sort of covered that. Let's see. What is one of his other questions here? He says I miss an effective 4-4-2 diamond. There is, if you watch the game against Colorado, it was a diamond. Jonathan Dos Santos was the bottom point.
4-3-1-2, right?
Yeah, but Jonathan Dos Santos really was the bottom of that diamond. Fabio Alvarez was the top of the diamond. You had Joe Corona out to the left. You had Sebastian to the right, and there was your diamond, and it worked to a certain point. It's still the fact that
the flanks is what let them down. Well, actually, it's the striker position.
It's the striker position where
be fair.
If you're going to play, Boateng there, then you play him in behind the defense and let him run to the ball. You don't hit it into his head while everybody's already back. And with Guillermo, the offense is generated from the outside backs too, and that's sort of that's great if you have Zlatan Ibrahimovic or another big head that you can sort of hit from those wide areas. But for me, the Galaxy attack gets right to the top of the 18-yard box as it's going dead straight ahead, right at the goalie, and then it swerves left or right to make sure it goes out to the flanks. It never goes through the middle.
This is the concern, Josh, is that in situations where there's injuries, what's the plan B?
Yeah.
And in that game against Colorado, he didn't make a decision quick enough once he did decide to bring Chris on and his plan B. But I think over a period of time, and when you're looking at the players we're going to lose over the summer and in the coming weeks, he's got to have a plan B.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, again, another huge challenge.
That's going to be a tough one.
So
all
you're
right.
grinning over there.
Yeah,
Something
just
tickle
chat.
you?
The chat room is now giving us like word for word, English lessons, like indefensible. I mean, they're spelling it out for us. Really,
you gotta love Google.
Hey, it is. Everybody's smart whenever they have a chance to look it up. That's what I say. Here we are trying to do this live. We can't just look everything up. Let's see. One last question from Reddit. Galaxy Fan 89. Do you think Galaxy's recent issues are due to chemistry, coaching, or is it due to an inadequate roster? Is either fixable this season? So for the first question, the answer is yes, because it's all of those things: coaching, chemistry, inadequate roster.
And can I just say something in 30 seconds, because it's a great question, and it was the last question I asked Zlatan before his ban, where we talked about character. Do you remember that question? And I said to him, well, you're someone who has character, you've got that experience. Is it down to you to help these players develop that character? And he was like, partly, yes, I got to be a leader, but partly they've got to have it.
Yeah.
And this is something I mentioned to you before we came on air. I'm not sure how many great characters there are in this dressing room. I think there are a few,
right?
But are there enough?
Yeah.
And it's a really good question, because I feel like that was something that was bugging him maybe after that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quality has always sort of been a question mark, and certainly over the last couple of years, you look at who they brought in and whether they have a success. I mean, Joao Pedro is a perfect example of that. That was an expensive transfer at $1.5 or $1.7 million the Galaxy spent, and he's on loan, in Portugal right now because they don't need him or want him. So he's never coming back. That's it. People are like, should they recall Joao Pedro? No, because he's not coming back. It's never happening. Ever. He's gone. That's it. So yeah, I mean, all those things are good. All right, let's try. We're going long today, apparently. That's fine. Everybody's still entertained in the chat room, so it's your fault? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I definitely think that I've talked way more than I've needed to on this show so far. You say smart things, I say like undefendable things or whatever that word is.
Well, I started that actually. That was my stupidity.
Yeah, but now you got me thinking about it, and this Arizona State education of mine is now like it's
Arizona State, huh?
Go Sun Devils. Yes.
I'm a buff.
From Colorado, huh? All right, so we got a little Pac-12 rivalry in here
do.
too. That's good. At least you didn't go to like Cal or something. Like we can't handle that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's get on to the game with Orlando now. As I do on these shows now, especially whenever we have a guest host, I don't give them any warning. I don't tell them what's going on, and I say that you have to come up with some sort of dramatic intro to Orlando. I know, just spring it on you. Get it going, because everybody else is trying to, they'll say for me to do it, and I refuse to do it anymore because everybody else does it better than me. So if you're up to it, you can give it a try. You think you can?
Sure.
I have music here.
Oh,
all right. Also, it's good music. You'll get pumped up. It's a little Games of Thrones. Like, it's not that, but it's sort of in that thread. Maybe a little NFL films if you get that, like, deep in the frozen tundra. It's one of those. So if you want to, you can give us just a small, short little preview. Give us your most dramatic, 1 or 2 lines of the preview for Orlando, and then we'll actually get into it and break it down a little bit. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here comes the music.
It's like rapping and
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, I feel like Eminem right now.
Well,
8 Mile.
I was going to say, the music was going to come on if the soundboard didn't freeze. So we'll take a break for a second. Hold on. Here we go.
Sure.
All right. Well, it's just live. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
People will hang in there. All right. Let's try this again. Here we go. The music starts now.
a franchise that came into the league promising everything with legendary Kaká. They've done nothing really since their arrival. LA, a team that promises so much, but without their lion, can they survive in the jungle?
Ooh.
We'll see on Friday.
Ooh, oh, I love it. See, that's solid
How
stuff.
was that?
Everybody's already just give them a second. There's a lag in the chat room. They're going to give you a rating. All right, and so we'll see what they say in here. So don't worry. If I did it, I usually get like 1s and 2s. So you for sure are going to be like
out of 5 or out of 10.
I don't know. They make it up themselves. They're going to give you Audi index points. The same ones that MLS uses.
I wish I'd gone a little Cockney on it.
You think
I should have gone
twisted it just a little bit.
They came into the league promising everything and delivered nothing. Absolutely bugger all.
That's awesome. 4 or 5. You got a thumbs up.
So it's out of 5. I'm taking that it's out of 5, not out of 10.
Yes, that's perfect. That was good. That was good. Oh, 5 of 5. She went up to an 11. There we go. Okay,
Boom.
so there you should feel
Thanks,
good.
guys.
You should feel good about that.
Yes.
I just think that they like
it.
anybody but me. Really is really what it comes down to.
They give you a hard time.
Yes, all the time.
They should.
Whenever I try to do it, they're like, "No, Josh, just stop. Everybody let it happen."
Thank you for springing that on me, by the way.
I refuse to give anybody a heads up. If you pay attention to the show and you come on, then you have a heads up. Now, if you ever come back on again, you will know that it's coming because I will do it every time. All right, LA Galaxy getting ready to take on Orlando. This game will kick off 4 p.m. Pacific time whenever the LA Galaxy travel 2,218 miles. By the way, I actually did the travel distance between the two airports so I could get that.
Is it a direct flight at least?
Yeah, I think it should be. I think the Galaxy can probably spring for an LAX to MCO, by the way. That's the airport identifier in Orlando. It's MCO. And in order to remember that,
what does the MC stand for?
I have no idea what it actually stands for, but the acronym that you should use in your head is Mickey's Corporate Office for Orlando.
Oh.
Mickey's Corporate Office, MCO. Yes, there you go. That was my
I
was my
have visions of MC Hammer now in my head, and I'm humming "You Can't Touch This" for some stupid reason.
Absolutely. Anyway, so Friday, May 24th, 4 p.m. Pacific time kickoff. The game can be found on Univision and Unimas. Check both of those. Also check on Twitter for that because that'll probably happen as well. Orlando's coming off a 5-1 win over FC Cincinnati, and that sort of snapped one of their bad losing streaks that they sort of had. They have one win in the last 5 games. They're 4-6-3, 15 points. At home, they're 3-3-1 for 10 points. And if you look at their last 3 games or last 5 games, it's 1-3-1 for 4 points. So that win against Cincinnati was some of their only points that they've gotten in a little time. With Nani, I believe, scoring 2 goals, and I think Dom Dwyer also got in and scored a goal.
Now, is he playing?
We don't. I've seen mixed results. You said you read something that he's probably suspended because of yellow cards.
The room will tell us if he's suspended or not.
They'll look.
I think.
Yeah.
I read that. I don't know again if that's.
There was
correct.
some argument about whether he had some good behavior reviews, because if you just look and say, oh, well, somebody has 5 yellow cards, then that doesn't necessarily mean that they're suspended, because if you go, I think, 3 or 5 games without a yellow card, whenever you have 4, or at any point, it used to be whenever you have 4, then it was triggered, you had to have 3 good games. Stupid MLS rules. This is the one I don't like anymore, because it used to be simple and easy to figure out, and you could do it, but now you have to go back and look over the games. If they don't get a yellow card in like 4 games or 5 games, they don't even have to be in a row. You get to remove one of those yellow cards.
He didn't start in that game against Cincy. And
no.
Do you feel, I mean, are we bothered by him playing or not? Do you feel like if
he scores goals, he's a streaky guy. So yeah, he's a problem if he starts scoring.
He'll come off the bench though, won't he?
It seems that way.
Yeah.
That seems how they've been starting Tesho Akindele up top. They've been starting Nani, who is their real threat. I mean, most assists, most goals for Nani, and then you also have Dom Dwyer, who has, I think, the most shots on the team. So he's a guy who, even whenever he comes in, he shoots the ball, whether they go on target or wherever.
He's not afraid to take a shot, is he?
Not at all. The other interesting sort of person will be the goalkeeper, Brian Rowe, who's former LA Galaxy, of course, and who has been playing actually quite well. 2 shutouts, 42 saves, 62 shots faced. His defense isn't helping him. That really is the weak point of this Orlando team. It seems like their attack is dangerous, but if you get into the midfield and you get into the defense a little bit, I feel like the Galaxy can have some.
They can be exposed. I mean, I know they're coming off a huge win against Cincy, but as you pointed out, they've had some bad results along the way. And Akindele and Nani together are really going to be the biggest problem. And that, like you said, their front 3 against our defense, that's a problem. And
I'm more. I think that I am of the belief, and you can totally disagree with me, is that the LA Galaxy defense is fine. It's mostly about what the midfield does that sort of influences how that defense plays, right? The fact that they didn't give up a goal really last game except on a counterattack, and that was a breakdown in midfield whenever Dos Santos got pulled too far forward and Pontius passed the ball into...
But they left themselves so exposed. I mean, granted, it was a mistake and they weren't expecting that moment to happen. And, that's what happens when players make mistakes and stuff. But they didn't react very well to the mistake, or they didn't react quick enough. They didn't allow themselves... I feel like sometimes positionally they're fragile. Do you think they're cohesive as a unit? Do you feel like, like you get some defenses that are really cohesive? And I don't know if there's a lot of trust between them and the goalkeeper.
There's change. There's too many changes right now.
It's the tinkering.
Yeah, and I think Guillermo understands that. One of the things Guillermo's told John, and it's worth, we're talking about that leaving it open, and this will go for this Orlando team because this is a team that's going to want to counter with Akindele and with Nani. They're going to want to move quickly, push out to the side. They're going to want to try to press that back line. Is that Guillermo said that, yes, we screwed up. Yes, that happened. You saw it, but the team has to understand that even when we're pressing for a goal, and clearly they were pressing for a win because a draw there, everybody would have been almost as upset as a loss. Almost.
True.
So you're pressing for the goal. You're at home. You should win that game, and you're not winning, and there's frustration there. He goes, even whenever that happens, we cannot leave ourselves in those positions where we allow us to be that open on the counterattack.
Right. And to be fair, the goalkeeper saved the initial shot.
David Bingham has had a fine year this year, by the way, and he has had a fine year this year. He has done fine. He is fine. There's never going to be a great year for David Bingham unless he suddenly goes on.
I don't know if there's confidence between him and the defense.
I don't know.
Am I reading too much into that?
I don't know what the defense is right now. I think that you have one player on there that's playing with a ridiculous amount of confidence, at Dan Steres. You have a rotational.
Why is he getting such a hard time?
Because people hate Dan Steres for no reason whatsoever. I have no idea. Larry wrote a wonderful article about Dan Steres, about the armband. He got the armband at the end of the game and all this stuff, and it was just nothing but hate.
People got so upset about that.
They were really upset.
Who do they think should have got the armband?
I don't know. It was Dan Steres. It was the right answer. He's a smart guy. Anyway, we'll just fight. By the way, the MCO. So my good friend Pam, who works for United Airlines, texted in to say. It was called McCoy Air Force Base, MCO.
Okay.
So there you go. That's what it is.
Wow, this is a great crowd you have, hey? Look at the backup that you have right here.
That's why the live
Smart
shows are
audience.
easier to do than the recorded shows. I don't have to know that much. The audience basically takes care of it. So, all right. So if you're looking at this game, the LA Galaxy right now, Jonathan Dos Santos seems like he's healthy. Antuna's the question mark, as we have sort of said. Traore apparently is healthy for this game. The other injuries that you had were Perry Kitchen, who was on the bench, and he should be fine for this game. So if you're looking at him, and then Roman Alessandrini, there aren't that many injuries right now.
Who do you start up front?
I think that you would start... I would really love to start Antuna up there again because I like him.
But you've just told
I just told everybody that he's not going to play. I think Pontius gets a start up front because if you're going to play the game where you cross the ball a whole bunch...
Away from home?
Chris knows how to do that.
Yes.
He also knows how to hold the ball. He's not as good as Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's not Zlatan's replacement. That's just... There isn't one.
If he had started the game against Colorado,
they would have won that game.
I don't think LA's losing that game.
They would have won the game. Yeah.
I mean, so I think that the coach will rectify the wrong. I think he'll start. And away from home, you're going to need to play a little bit, I wouldn't say long bally, but you're going to need to pile those balls in the box, and I think that would be that would be best.
That Chris Pontius. So I mean, I would expect that the lineup does not change that much. All right, everything basically stays the same, except that you might have to find a replacement for Antuna, whether that's Leggett, and you put Leggett up top because you do have the wingers sort of available now to be able to do some other things with Fabio Alvarez, and you could push out something. There's some ways to move some stuff around. Because this is a Friday game. Usually I do my lineups on Friday, and I try to think it through and do the whole thing. With Antuna not being there, that sort of threw a wrench in everything, and I'm trying to figure out where everybody slides now in order to do it. But the defense also is a big question because are you going to start Polenta at left back again? Are you going to start Traore?
He got a yellow card in the...
He did.
But he's not... We don't
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah,
I've seen nothing about the suspensions or anything. And by the way, if you're looking at the history of this match, the Galaxy have won all the games against Orlando at home. At Dignity Health Sports Park or in LA, and Orlando has won all of the games in Orlando.
Yeah.
So it's 2-0 for the LA Galaxy against Orlando City so far in their brief history. So I don't know what that says other than the fact that, if you're playing my favorite analogy, which is the roulette wheel, it keeps coming up red. Eventually, it's going to come up black, right? You can't lose them all. You can't win them all.
No.
That doesn't happen. So between
they need
those
to
things,
show some character in this game.
What is your prediction for this game? And then we're getting out of here.
I'm going to go 2-2.
2-2.
I don't know where the goals are going to come from.
I always do that. I predict it and I say I have no idea who's going to score, but they're going to get 2.
Yes, I fancy a 2-2. I think LA gets a result. They don't have to win. They just can't lose. It's very important that they get something out of this, especially, as I said earlier, without Zlatan. It will do the world of good for some of these players.
The problem I have with this game is that the travel is always an issue, and going that far and doing all that is always... you need to see, as you said, character would be nice, because they're going to have a midweek game against Sporting Kansas City that they're going to have to rebound
Absolutely.
for. Winning this game makes that midweek game against Sporting Kansas City, who's struggling right now, much easier.
Do you play the same formation? Or again, is it based on Antuna?
It's based on Antuna, because otherwise I don't know who you're going to put up top. I mean, putting Pontius up as a 1, like Zlatan does, fixes a lot of issues that you can sort of fill back in with the midfield where you have some players. So yeah, I think that Pontius probably plays up top by himself, which people are going to cry about. But with Fabio Alvarez in the 10 now...
After he gets a first goal, then they won't.
Yeah, Fabio is going to score like 7 goals, I'm sure. That's how it goes. All right, I think that about does it. Are we good? Do you feel good about this? We're done here?
I feel great. I mean, you're the boss. I'm the hired help here today. Well, actually hired. I'm not being paid, by the way.
Nobody ever gets paid on the show. You know what? I'll double the amount of money I'm giving you right now. So 2 times 0. There you go. See?
Oh my gosh! Don't reveal my salary to the masses.
That's right.
Like these poor
that's
players.
how it goes. All right. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, and then we'll rock and roll.
Awesome. I'm at Soccer Diva on Twitter, and if you're interested in English football too, I do at Highbury Squad is the podcast, and you can catch me on TalkSport during the week, contributing wonderful stories.
Awesome. Sophie, you've been a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by. We certainly appreciate it. You'll be invited back very soon. You live close to the studio. It's always a good thing too. So
thank you for listening, everyone.
Awesome. All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com for all of our podcasts, all of our articles, all that stuff. We'll have Larry Morgan articles up there. We'll have your preview, and we'll get you ready for that game against Orlando. LA Galaxy all the way in Orlando, 4 p.m. kickoff on Friday, an early game on Friday, so make sure you're there. Check all of the websites for the watch parties, and I'm sure you'll see you out there. All right. For Miss Sophie Nicolaou, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.